Hey, Bhaskar.
Okay. So, yeah. Hi everyone. Thank you all for joining our discussion on cyber resilience, changing landscape of cyber attacks during the pandemic. We have an amazing group of panelists with us today to give us more insights on this topic. Please join me in welcoming Rana Gupta, Amit Patil, Bhaskar Annadata, and Alka Pendharkar. Rana is the Vice President of APAC Sales Region for Cloud Protection and Licensing at Thales Group. He is responsible for delivering revenue and profitability growth, developing partner and channel networks, and the monitoring of business operations in the region. He is an enthusiastic public speaker, presenting his technology expertise at various forums in Asia. Amit is the Director of Cloud Security Platform at Google. Prior to this, Amit headed the engineering globally for the security products group at VMware, where he incubated the App Defense SaaS product offering focused on cloud workload security. Amit was the India site leader for VMware Carbon Black. Prior to VMware, Amit was a co-founder of Indus Foundry Softtech Integrators India, where he led the development of Mortgage Ramp and the Market.com's financial products. Bhaskar is a senior manager at VMware, leading the Carbon Black Cloud Security team in Security BU of VMware. He has over 12 years of experience in VMware, where he worked on products like vCloud Director, NSX, vCloud Air, HCX, and Telco Cloud Automation. He is passionate about giving back to the community and is part of VMware's Green Dot initiative. Alka, who is going to be a moderator for this session, is a senior manager at VMware. She is an engineering leader with 20 plus years of experience in managing enterprise and software development projects in security and networking domain. After spending first few years of her career at DRDO, she worked with SafeNet as an R&D lead for security products in data encryption and control domain. At VMware, she manages a team working on the new intent-based management plane for the network virtualization product NSX. Welcome all. I'll give the stage to our panelists now.
Hey, thank you, Shreya. Thank you for the introduction. And it's my pleasure to have Amit, Rana, and Bhaskar on this panel. And as long as I have known these people, they've all been, associated with the security domain, developing software products in this domain. So I'm hoping that we'll have a good, insightful discussion during this panel. And to start with, I'll go first to Rana. Rana, I've known you for more than 20 years and you have been in the security domain. My question to you is that how did you land up, a career in security? And over these years, how do you see this field of security evolve and change? Rana.
Sure. First of all, thanks for having me at this platform. Hello, everyone. Well, Alka, getting into security field was a chance for me by and large. While I'm trained as an electrical engineer, I had the flair for an interest for software development very early on during my engineering studies itself. I didn't do much with that aspect till later after I did my master's and I joined a company that was working in the area of software licensing products, and that too after a couple of non-software related jobs. Till I found that my actual passion and calling was in software. And that journey that started with software licensing led me to foray with public key cryptography when I started working on middleware for PKI USB authentication tokens, and then on to hardware security modules, and later on encryption and key management aspects of information security. Just like everything else, the field of information security has, in my experience, faced enormous changes over the past 2 decades, as it no longer can work with the assumptions of devices. I remember all this discussion around bring your own devices. How can you allow that? And these days, we don't even think or talk about it. that devices that are solely issued by the organization, the applications that are hosted in its own environment within a network that has physical boundary to it, so on and so forth. Yesterday only, and I would not name the bank, I was surprised to see one of the largest private banks in India who's about to onboard on all the three public clouds, including Google. I mean, you wouldn't have imagined that till a couple of years back only. So essentially, the security field has to deal with the disappearance of network boundaries, users and administrators working from remote locations on devices that are brought by themselves, using applications that are hosted as a service on public cloud. And with the data explosion and prevalence of that data. Similarly, I think in the wake of digital transformation, security field has evolved from being parametric security focused to identity and data focused, whereby it is realized that securing the network boundaries through traditional VPN, firewall, IDS, IPS is not sufficient enough, and those measures have to be augmented with securing the identities and protecting the data through encryption. So, in a nutshell, essentially, more so than ever in the past, I think this field of information security has become much more relevant, Alka.
Yes, and it's relevant not just in enterprises and corporates, but even at retail users.
Yes.
Thank you, Rana. Amit, what about you? Did you make security as a career of your choice, or you also happened to get into it by chance? And what is your thought about how security has evolved over the period of time?
No, so I think firstly, thank you for having me on this forum. Thanks to you, Hussaina, and the entire Women of Code community for inviting me here. And my story is no different from Rana's, right? So I ended up in the security field by chance. Not only security, even software I ended up by chance, right? So that was not when as I was studying and graduating, software wasn't my first choice, right? So my first brush with security started with some key management and certificate management products way back in 99, 2000. That is when I had my first brush with security. But my real entry into security started with my journey at VMware, where I led the endpoint security partner program. And from there, we moved on to workload security, EDR, XDR, MDR, all the next generation security products and services. So I think Rana summarized it well as to how security has evolved. Right? As he talked about, it touched upon public clouds and companies, even companies and organizations that were averse to moving outside their own private data centers are now embracing the public cloud wholeheartedly. So in a true sense, there is a digital transformation that is sweeping. And in this digital transformation, security is a fundamental and a vital element. Like without security, digital transformation simply cannot happen. Security is a key ingredient. Right? And the way I like to think about security is you are actually protecting the application and data that you want to protect. And there are three key pillars of security. Right? The first is, how do I reduce my attack surface? So this is all about hardening. This is about putting the right policy controls in place, having the right solutions to protect the assets and the data that you want to protect. So that is the first part. The second part is, after you have reduced the attack surface, how do I then try and detect anything that is bypassing these mechanisms, right? So it is all about detection and response. So whether it be network-based detection and response, whether it be endpoint-based detection and response. And this is a field, this second area, really that has taken off in the last few years, primarily because the attackers have gotten increasingly sophisticated. As organizations, individuals, companies, big and small, governments have all embraced digital transformation. These attacks have gotten more and more sophisticated, and the really detection and response field has really gotten big. And the third area is what I called around governance, risk, and compliance. This is about periodically going back, looking at both things that we have detected and responded to, looking at the security posture, the policy controls that we have put in place, and auditing them from time to time and fine tuning them and verifying that the necessary controls are in place. So these are the three things. And the common thread in all of this, as rightly Rana has identified, is data. Right? It has become more and more increasingly a play around managing data and signals at scale. When we say data, I say data, it's really about the signals coming from your users, what users are accessing, what devices, your network telemetry, as well as signals that we gather from endpoint around activity that is happening on the endpoint. So this data is being gathered at scale. There is petabytes of data that is gathered every month by multiple vendors, and it is all about analyzing this data and staying ahead of the attacks. So that is a big trend, and that is how security, IC security, has evolved over the years.
Yeah, great. So it's an ongoing journey, and it continues to shape as we go up ahead. Bhaskar, I am coming to you now. So, what are your thoughts? How did you get into this field of security? And if you want to add something more to what Rana and Amit already shared.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for inviting me here, and a very good afternoon to everyone. My journey has also been very similar. I would probably focus on some things which everyone could relate to. As developers, right, we all do secure coding practices. We all have to follow those for our organizations, right? So that's where my first interaction with security came. Then, as I made progression through my career, right, uh, while building cloud solutions, multi-tenant aspects, right, you need to make sure that the data doesn't leak. The repercussions are always there. And then had an opportunity to work in network virtualization where we try to move the needle, right, in terms of preventing east-west lateral movement, as we call it, not just the perimeter firewall, but lateral movement as well. And uh, as a as a result of pursuing opportunities, right, here I am in the Carbon Black business unit where we focus on cybersecurity. If we talked about the evolution of security, folks have already very nicely illustrated about the digital transformation, right? So if I look back, right, 2000, when I was just coming out of the college, viruses were a nuisance, and the monetary attacks that one could face was credit card fraud back then. Those were the two things that I would hear. If we look at today, right, 2021, each and every one of us is a potential target for phishing attacks. Uh, there's no tool realm that's left out, right? Even your Google Pay and all that, everything is subject to phishing attacks. And the stakes have increased. Now it's not about viruses and malwares, right? It's about ransomware, it's about nation state actors, it's about crypto mining, it's about how you can make the most of your time to steal somebody else's money. And so the threat landscape, right, it's constantly evolving, and it's been very challenging, right? And we're always wondering what is that emerging threat, what is around the corner, and the security researcher trying to beat the bad guys, right? So it's a very active field, I would say. Very scary, but very exciting. Lots of opportunities, lots of work to be done as well.
Yeah, so a lot of facets and lot of aspects to this field of security. Thank you for your insights. Uh, you know what? We've seen that very few women, embrace security field as their career and profession. Uh, so my next question is, what can we do, or what can be done to improve the participation of women, into the cybersecurity domain? And what advice you would give to the aspirants today, in this audience, to embrace that as a career? And Amit, I would want to start from you.
So I think I would go back to how the three of us introduced ourselves, right? If you look at it, all three of us landed in the security field by chance. It wasn't by design or by intent, right? And the whole reason for that is that security itself has evolved. It is an upcoming area. It is an area to look forward to the future, right? Bhaskar touched on it, like the importance of security has gone up. It's not only rogue actors, but even nation state actors. The next wars are actually going to be fought in cyber security. That is where the next warfare is going to happen. It's not going to happen on the field, right? And it is no surprise that generally some people have been lucky enough, like us, to latch on to the wave. Others are not, right? So I think the very first thing starts from education, right? And education, there are two ways, two aspects of it. One is first acknowledging and understanding that the potential of this field, that the field has grown tremendously. I think it is events like this and just stressing on the importance of cybersecurity is super essential to attract key talent to it. Right. The second aspect of it is the responsibilities. Security is no longer now a unidimensional play, right, where only the SOC analysts or people who are monitoring are responsible for security. There are a lot of opportunities. I think the education around this entire spectrum of opportunities that exist is again super critical. So that is the second thing. And so first is getting yourself educated on the different aspects of security. Security is tremendous. It's vast. There's endpoint, there is cloud, there's network, there's governance risk and compliance, there is SOC monitoring, there's network monitoring. There are a wide variety of tools. I can just go on. Like we had a very famous slide that all analysts, whether it's Gartner or Forrester, use, where every enterprise has upwards of 100 security solutions deployed at any given point of time. Now the responsibility also has shifted significantly. So earlier it was just the security team's responsibility. Now, right from your development teams, your product security teams, your operation teams, and your SOC analysts, everybody is responsible. So anybody who is there in the software space can first identify the opportunities that they're interested in, the area of interest. A good way to start is, if you are in development or testing, just look at your responsibilities in that particular area and how they align with security. We'll see a lot of emphasis on security and privacy reviews. You'll see a lot of emphasis on secure coding. You'll see a lot of emphasis on threat modeling, penetration testing. So all of these are opportunities to familiarize yourself with security and understand. So work collaboratively in that space, and then educate yourself, right? And there are two ways to learn. One is actually going and reading stuff everywhere. The second is learning from the people around you. You'll see plenty of people in your teams, in your organizations, who are pretty passionate about security. I think learn from these individuals. That is, in my mind, I think these are some of the key things that even I myself have used to get into security. As I reflect back on my career, what are the things that really attracted me to this field and kept me going? These things stand out.
Yeah, and thanks, Amit. And as you said, all three of you landed in this career by chance. But now people can make very conscious choice about pursuing this as a career, because awareness is huge. And as we said, everybody is impacted in one way or the other with this domain. So thank you. Rana, what would your suggestion be to the audience, the women in the audience, on pursuing security as their career choice?
Well, I think I can only say that, and Amit has already summarized all the factors that are playing out there. I can only say that unless you believe that information technology in itself is going to go away, uh, there is no reason you should be not looking at information security or cyber security as the field of choice for you, because nothing can be implemented out there without taking into account the security. I can give you a couple of examples recently. This bank that I spoke, talked about earlier, they have a hard deadline in the middle of this month to go live, and they can't go live without meeting the security requirements. I mean, that's the kind of influence the decision making that lies in the hands of cybersecurity professionals within the organizations these days. The other example that I can give is the recent guidelines that are coming out there. The RBI has mandated that any of the products that are to be utilized within the banks have to provide, the vendors have to provide the static analysis and vulnerability analysis reports. Without that, they cannot meet the RBI guidelines. Uh, in terms of how we can improve the participation, and I wish I was not being part of this panel. Instead, some female be part of this panel. It doesn't behoove right that three of us talking on this panel. But I would say that keep the faith is all that I can think of as my guidance to the female audience. I know that there is a lot that has to happen before we can all start to be satisfied with the status, and a lot has to change. But the fact that I am speaking at such a platform that connects the women to code in itself would have been unthinkable till a few years back. And hence is this great sign of progress being made in this regard. We can and shall use every such opportunity to highlight the strengths and benefits of cybersecurity as a profession. I think that, as Amit said, that education, awareness, more people get to understand why it is required, they can make the conscious decision. That shall help raise the awareness in women that even within the larger realm of information technology and software development, there does exist the specialized need for cybersecurity, Alka.
Great. Thanks, Rana. Bhaskar, you would want to add your thoughts to what has already been said?
Yeah. So Amit quite nicely illustrated as a developer, as an engineer, right? How you can make the progression towards working in security, right? Now, while we were all talking, right, I couldn't help but notice a question that came up on the chat as well. To contribute to the security domain, right, you don't need to be a white hat hacker or something esoteric like that, right? We have requirements. In fact, I'll do a shameless plug here. Please look me up in LinkedIn. We are actually recruiting. We are keen on recruiting women. So we need people from all skill sets, right? Whether it is you have Python skills, you have Java skills, backend, cloud. You're all welcome. You can all make a start, right? You can start with your current skill set and then grab or develop an understanding about the domain, and that will lead to developing a passion about the domain, right? And then one thing will add on top of others. Now, going back to your original question, right, Alka, if I may take another minute. In general, women are underrepresented, and cybersecurity is no exception. But there are glowing examples also. So today, in preparation to joining this panel, right, I was thinking about it a little bit, and one role model I can tell you about is Amelia Estwick, who is the CTO of threat research for Carbon Black. Please look her up. An amazing career, not just a director in our org now. She has great credentials in ACADS, and she has great credentials collaborating with NSA and the US government, right? So, I mean, women in particular, because of their unique skills, attention to detail, and their ability to do multitasking, and anybody in general, right? If you really apply your mind, if you are keen on it, right, you will find opportunities, and opportunities will also find you.
Wow, great, Bhaskar. And thank you for letting this audience know that you have opportunities in the security domain within VMware, where they can apply and start their career or, take their career forward in the security domain. Thank you, Bhaskar. A very, basic question before I get to specific, security related question is that all of you have been in this career by chance. Did you ever question your your this choice, and did you ever want to go back? And if you did not, or if you thought, what made you again come back to be in the security domain? And Bhaskar, I'll start with you.
Well,
And I'm okay if you say that no, you never wanted to go back, or you never had any, you never questioned your this,
it's something like
choice.
that actually, Alka. So in my case, right, and touchwood, I haven't had any negative experience. I've always found it as a learning opportunity. I moved from NSX, where I was focusing on east-west lateral movement related stuff, to a hybrid cloud kind of a thing, and then by chance I came back to the current role where I am. But it's always been a pleasant. There will always be challenges, Alka. There's no doubt about it. Something will hit the ceiling. You'll have to go do firefight. But in the right company, in a right place like VMware, right? I don't think people will regret their career choices, irrespective of which area they pick.
Wow, great, great. Rana, what about you? I know you have changed roles, but did you ever think that this was not the right place or
I
right?
would say,
Go ahead.
I would say, Alka, that having worked with the CISOs, CIOs, I don't envy what they end up doing day to day. I'm glad that I'm not on that side of the table. But I don't recall ever questioning my state of landing up in the area of cybersecurity. No, though I did question myself for staying in the area of software development and engineering for too long and not making the switch to the dark side of the world into the sales a lot sooner than what it ended up being, because I think customer facing role gives you an entirely different perspective. But having said that, I'm glad that I didn't end up making the transition from engineering to sales, even though that I'm the worst salesperson ever. But I guess I do okay in the role of building good teams. But back to your question, the fact that I never had to question my state of being in the area of cybersecurity also is a testimony in my mind to what I said earlier about the strength of cybersecurity as a profession. Uh, Cybersecurity is a mandatory part at this point in time of IT field. As I said, nothing can be rolled out. I mean, unless you want to run the business to ground. You can ignore cybersecurity at your own peril. But I think this is a great place to be. Nothing else that I can think of at this point in time.
Great. And Amit, from VMware to Google, you're still continuing your security journey. So I'm expecting that you would also say that you never, look back. But I would want to hear from you.
No. So absolutely. So I'll share a story, right? So this was like 3-4 years into my career at VMware, and I was at the cusp of taking a call, moving from one team to another, whether I should do it, not do it. And at that time, so I was visiting the US, so frequent traveler, like many of the people on this call. And in one of the trips that year, I decided to take my kids and wife with me as well. I decided we'll have a personal holiday, and honestly, it was happening because I was at that cusp of hey, I'm changing teams. Plus, I had an external opportunity which was not into security, right? Which was outside of security. It was a healthcare company. It was an opportunity to lead their entire India operations at that time, and so I was deliberating in my mind. And when I went there, in one of the meetings, one of a very seasoned leader, whom I respect a lot, they made a comment in passing, right? That hey, security is really about putting a firewall, putting an antivirus solution, and the rest you really don't need to worry. Even if a breach happens, we'll do some PR exercise and we'll get rid of it, right? And I really, at that point, I don't blame the leader. I respect the leader a lot. It's just the way the field has evolved, right? Over the period of years, from being like, hey, just firewall and AV, to like being top of mind for every CEO, the field has evolved significantly. And that made me think, hey, really, is this other opportunity in healthcare? Should I pursue it, right? And what happened that year is, because I had taken my family on the weekend, I took my children to a tour of Stanford. So Stanford has this nice tour where one of the sophomore students takes you around the campus and they explain you the college, the culture, the facilities, how the thinking is. And one of the things that stood out there in that tour, and I tell my children, I remind them every year about that, is the notion, right, that you have to make a difference to humanity. You have to make a difference in the world, right? It's not about studying. It's not about working, right? What is the difference that you're making to this world? How are you making the lives better for everybody around you and in the world, right? So that was a very strong message that the tour guide who walked us around the campus gave. And that resonated with me very, very strongly. It was like a reminder, a refresher. Yes, this is the higher purpose that you have to look for. And today I can tell you, uh, cyber security is one such area where you can actually make a difference in the world. It is about the mission. It is about the mission of keeping the world safe from cyber attacks, keeping your children safe from online attacks, right? Malicious content that is floating all around. I think these are core tenements of security. And I think that is what has kept me going. And I think I'll remain a security practitioner and a professional throughout.
Yeah, so it's a force for good. And I remember, so you moved from a reactive solution to a proactive solution.
Yes.
So that was great. This question actually was intended to let the audience also know that how people who have been in this domain for a long time continue to see it so challenging, and they don't want to get back. So good answers, and great answers from all of you.
Alka, if I may interrupt, right? There's a question also, do we require hacking skills in order to contribute better to security? The answer to that is no, not necessary. Security is a very vast field. Because it is sort of related to this question, I wanted to just talk about it earlier. It is not necessary. There are different roles, there are different things. In fact, one of the biggest challenges facing security and security practitioners is complexity, right? And the opportunity really is, how can you simplify security, right? How can you make it operationally easy to implement? How can you take complexity out? And this is all about management and doing the small things to making security better. So the field is very vast. You don't necessarily need hacking skills.
Yeah, that's true. It's like hacking is just one aspect of security. Great. So Amit, my next question is to you. So these days the threat actors are finding very innovative ways to launch attacks, and with all the resources and tools at their disposal, this is becoming a huge concern. Right? There are examples. For example, spear phishing, where the attackers target specific individuals, like in authority, and who have control over a certain part of the system. Or last year there was this Twitter attack on the Bitcoin scam. Before that, there was an attack on the nuclear power station in India, the Colombo. How can one handle these scenarios? What can be done to prevent this from happening? I mean, reacting to something that has happened is no good. So what are your thoughts? How should one handle such scenarios?
Yeah. So again, this goes back to my first answer that I gave, right? The three aspects of security. One is reducing the attack surface, and then second is detecting and responding, and the third is regular audit, governance, and compliance, which includes fine-tuning your best practices, right? But if you see in any attack, there are 4 stages, right? The first stage is infiltration, where an attacker gets foothold into your environment, whether it's your company, your network, your asset, and this is not necessarily they don't necessarily enter the strongest place. They will actually penetrate in the weakest area, right? The second phase of any attack is characterized by a lateral movement, where the attacker moves from one asset to another, one endpoint to another, one machine to another, till they find something that is of interest to them, right? The third phase is where they extract high value data. So extraction, we call it as extraction, right? And the last phase is typically called as exfiltration, where after extracting the high value data, the attacker tries to erase all their activity so that nobody can detect what has gone wrong. So typically the most common thing in this stage is they try to eradicate all the logs, right? So these are the 4 stages. And really, if you look at security controls or solutions, they are targeted at each of the 4 stages. Right? And a lot of the high profile attacks, the basic link that is missing is the first phase where they infiltrate the attack, right? And as I said, security has now become a team sport. So everybody is responsible. It is not just the security team, right? From the developers who are developing software to make sure that they're following secure coding practices, they're not including vulnerable open source software, they're upgrading and patching their systems from time to time, uh, all the way to the security analysts who are looking at attacks and detecting and respond. But I think the most important thing is educating your users. And you'll now see a lot of big companies actually doing mock runs, trial runs, and at VMware also, I'm sure you guys are doing this.
Yes.
For sure, where you'll see mock attacks being sent on email. The very common things is clicking on some link, right, inadvertently, and attackers have gotten very clear at masking, very clever at masking their identity. So the one thing is education. Second is joint responsibility, right? And the third thing is fine tuning and incorporating best practices from time to time. So a lot of times the GRC pillar, many organizations look at it more as a checkbox, right? But that is not really the case. GRC is super important. You have to use the compliance lens to audit and fine tune your best practices. I'll give you the simple example of the same attack that you talked about, the Kundakulam nuclear plant attack, right? Where actually in that attack, what happened is there were North Korean state actors who tried to penetrate, and because they wanted to steal technology, they wanted to understand how to do enrichment using uranium instead of thorium, which is a much cheaper way of developing nuclear power, right? So that was the intent of that attack. So simple best practices there, like separating your IT and OT systems, right? Your IT systems and OT systems should be air gapped. They should always be separated. So this is one example of best practices. There are many such other best practices. One example is education and doing this mock runs. And we continue this feedback loop and stay ahead of the attacks.
Thanks, Amit. That was very insightful. At VMware, I have seen a lot of this mock phishing emails coming in, and unfortunately, many a times people fall prey to that. I mean, it's so much. It comes naturally that okay, some email has come. There is a link, and you would want to go and see that. Okay, oh, what is it saying? So everybody has to be really very, very conscious and aware on how to detect and prevent falling prey to these attacks. Rana, I want to come to you for my next question. During this pandemic, a lot of ransomware attacks have been launched, and so I would want to know from you that what is this ransomware? The attackers, they they disable you from accessing your own data, or they threaten to make your data public. One way is they encrypt your data, and then you are not able to access your own data. So regular backup, is it the only solution? What is this? What are the solutions, and how can we prevent this? So I want to hear from you on the ransomware and the different ways that people are attacking networks and organizations and systems, and then ask for ransom.
Sure, Alka. I think Amit put it very concretely in terms of infiltration, those 4 phases. And those phases are used in every approach out there, whether you call it as a supply chain attack or as recent as the novel mechanism where one of the software providers supply chain was infiltrated, and they had to pay to the tune of $10 million to get a decryption key that they can use for decrypting the data across the board for all their customers. But in general, I think, as Bhaskar earlier said, the malware attacks have been there since the inception of IT field. We used to call it as virus, and that's it. So it used to be simply in the form of computer viruses that would be designed to disrupt your working. With the advent of cryptocurrency, I think it has become easier to undertake the monetary transactions anonymously, and that too anonymously. Uh, and that has given the rise to ransomware attacks. So the reason why you see all these ransomware attacks happening now, vis-a-vis many years back, is because they have found, or all these things have come together in terms of high-speed networks, cryptocurrency, and ability to convert the cryptocurrency to the hard cash is the reason behind proliferation of ransomware attacks. Uh, so as the ransomware attack started, the focus was to lock out, as you said, the legitimate users from their systems by encrypting the data. So you are forced to sort of seek ways out of it. So it was appropriately felt by the IT professionals that by having the regular and disciplined backup and restore capabilities, one could restore the last known good state of organizational IT systems, and hence can avoid paying the ransom that is demanded. As one can imagine, in any cat and mouse game, the ransomware attacks then evolved to double extortion, whereby not only the data is encrypted and hence rendered useless for legitimate users, but before encrypting the data, it is also taken out by the hackers in the clear. So they first get hold of your sensitive data and then leave the encrypted data behind. Now, since the hacker now has the organization's sensitive data in the clear with it, it has the second leverage of releasing that sensitive data on the public internet or sell it in the dark net. So in this case, even if the organization has a golden backup from which it can restore its IT systems and make them functional without having to pay anything to the hacker, it still has the problem of its sensitive data being sold or released to the others, and that makes the life much more problematic and harder for the security professionals. So that to your question, having the backup and restore is no longer enough. It is required, it is absolutely needed, but it is not enough any longer. This has to be augmented with all the things that both Amit and Bhaskar earlier mentioned. But one of the things that can be looked into typically is implementing some sort of encryption, having secure key management so that the keys are can never be taken out of that secure hardware, along with some sort of smart identity and access management. That will go a typically, I've seen organizations now implementing that to protect themselves against this newer breed of ransomware attacks, Alka.
Right. So it's not just one solution. It's a combination of tools and solutions that will prevent you from a ransomware attack.
And more so, as other panelists said, it is also about the education. I mean, the more everybody in the team is aware about the possibility of these things happening, they would be all looking out for signs as to what is going outside the ordinary realm of things. Because at the end of the day, how do you prevent that from happening if something has come from your supply chain itself?
Yeah, right. And like Amit said, yeah, your security is as strong as your weakest link. And if you leave that, then I mean, God bless. Bhaskar, coming to you, from this work from home, situation that started since the pandemic started, a lot of almost every organization's IT department had to overnight rapidly transform to allow secure and remote access to users at a very large scale. So what do you think are the challenges that these organizations must have faced, and what did your organization, do to overcome this challenge and uh, let the huge remote workforce work securely and business continuity to be kept? So what
Yeah.
are your thoughts?
So, Alka, I really wish somebody from our IT team would have been here, answered this question, and taken the credit for keeping all of us productive. Right? They've done a
True.
phenomenal job. But from our interactions with colleagues and with other friends, let me try to throw some light at what happened. Right? When the pandemic hit us, right, we were caught staring at headlights, right, in the middle of the road. And if I were to classify it, there were two categories of organizations. One who already had this notion of workforce is mobile and people do work from home and stuff like that, at least once or twice a week, right? Which is the category under which most of us fall, right? VMware, most of the IT oriented companies. But then remember, there were also a lot of organizations who had people sitting in their work desk and on a device which is like a workstation, and it's not a mobile device, right? Just imagine what kind of stress these organizations have gone through, right? They had to one provision devices, then techniques, technologies, licenses, and then you start issuing POs. I have a neighbor who has his own company, right? They're into VDIs. Overnight, all their customers, right? They were asking for going from 100 to 1000, 10,000, astronomical numbers, right? Like you wouldn't have even assumed a linear growth rate. These are all exponential growth rates and new customers coming in, and this is market opportunity. So in general, right, the IT teams, irrespective of which category they fell in, right, they did a phenomenal job. They took up the challenge. They worked. They had to do things like applying for passes, pulling levers for these select few people to travel from home to office, right? So that they can join the wires and power on the systems that have been provided. Very complex operation, I would say. Now, a very VMware centric answer is one, educating the employees through immersive trainings, mandatory trainings, particularly those who are on the security side, right? We gave good trainings, mandated them to go through the trainings. We carved out time bandwidth for that. Then the supply chain attack that you mentioned, right? The solar winds that forced all of us to see, Mera ghar to theek hai na, this is not something. Am I a victim? Am I going to be the next victim of this kind of a thing? Then there are a lot of things that some of us take for granted, right? Like collaboration tools that are given by the approved collaboration tools that the IT provisions for us, right? They play a very important role because they allow us to work seamlessly, Slack or Teams or whatever, right? In the absence of that, right, it would have been a huge burden for us. So net, right, if you take a 10,000 feet view, right, the goal of security is to make day-to-day operation of all the employees easy, but secure the interests of the company, the organization. It's not just about attacks, it's also about unintended loss of data through any which way, like an unprotected S3 bucket or a document which has too much access. So you think things like new employee changing roles, employee leaving the company, all these things, right? They are, every small thing becomes a dimension in security. And then the most important thing is people, right? If people are aware, if we are doing a good job of training them, and our tools should not impede their day-to-day work, right, then we'll be in a good spot. We also have to be compassionate during these times, right? It's a very challenging time for all of us, especially the IT team, because what we expect is, hey, mera account nahi chal raha hai. It's not just Bhaskar that they are catering to, right? They're catering to the entire org and all the complexities.
Yes, and IT organization departments in almost all organizations had a very challenging time.
Absolutely.
And VMware products have also helped other organizations meet their, remote workforce needs during this pandemic. Thank you, Bhaskar. Another one very quick question, and this is again for all of you. Amit, I'll start from you. What do you think has helped you excel in your career
So many things
security in the security domain?
in the security domain, right? Yes. So I think some of it I touch base, right? But if I were to generally look back, uh, I think from time to time, right, taking a step back and reflecting, right, where is the career heading, right? What are you working for? What is your mission, right? Is this something that you want to do long term? Does this align with your core mission? That is the first thing. The second thing I would say is also learning from people, right? So that is, I think, super important because I think as you heard from everybody here on this panel that uh, security field has evolved from being like a apply a few controls and forget about it to now being like even governments, even head of states give prime importance to security. So the field has evolved. So as the field evolves, things have moved and changed, and there has been a lot of dynamism at play, right? The sectors have evolved, segments have evolved, the kinds of tools and technologies you build have evolved, the challenges have evolved. So learning from the best, learning from your customers, learning from your colleagues, learning from all your partners around you, I think that is key. So that learning is super important. And the last thing I would say is perseverance, right? So I go back to my passion around hiking, right? So in hiking, you get the best view after the hardest climbs, right? And it is the same in career, whether be it in security or any other career that you. Okay? Perseverance is super important. You will see most success after hard work. I think there is no substitute for it.
Yes, right. I think Rana has had some internet connectivity problems. Bhaskar, what is your take? What do you attribute, uh, to the success of your career?
So Amit gave a very nice detailed answer. Now, one thing I would like to add, right, is in cybersecurity and in general also, right. Once in a while, you'll come to a spot where there is total lack of clarity. We know what we want to do, but how we want to do, we nobody knows, right? And that is the time you kind of apply your mind, you use your collaborations, do a teamwork, try to kind of come up with a good solution, and don't be afraid of socializing your solution, putting it up for review, and then in a nutshell, right, dare to lead and make most of opportunities, and that is how you would make progress, is what I would say. Small thing to add to what Amit has already said.
Right, right. So it's perseverance, it's learning, it's just keeping your minds open, to whatever is happening around you. Thank you. I think Rana is still, having internet issues. This is my last question, and in very short, in 1 minute, I want Amit, you and Bhaskar. Uh, is Rana back? You and Bhaskar to summarize your suggestions, your advice to the audience today. Who is listening into this panel discussion. So, Amit, we'll start from you.
Um, so thanks, Alka. I think I covered most of it before, right? So if I look back, I think learn, right? Uh, so that is the fundamental thing, right? Learn about everything, and there are two ways of learning that all of us know about. One is which everybody follows is by reading, right? Going to a school, studying, taking up a course, doing some online course, which is very common. I think the part that we don't take advantage of is learning from people around you. I think that is super critical. Everybody, no matter junior, senior, peer, outside the company, inside the company, everybody has a lot to teach you, right? About many things. So keep learning. That is one. The second thing is do reflect from time to time as to where you're going and what you want to do. And the last thing is be passionate about whatever you're doing. I think those three things are super important.
Great. Bhaskar, what would
Yeah.
you, how would you summarize, in less than a minute, so that our audience, knows what should be done?
So in one of these settings, right, where I was an attendee in conference, right, I picked up something. Let me pass it on. You'll be surprised how eager and keen people are to share their learnings and their knowledge when you reach out to them and ask them for help or inputs or advice. And in a one-on-one setting, right, in a smaller forum, people people will always be very nice to you. It's human interaction element comes out, and you'll be pleasantly surprised how easy it is to extract knowledge, learn, or sometimes even resolve issues or reach a consensus. So that's something I learned from others. That's one thing I can share.
Great, great. Hey, I think we are on the top of our hour. Shreya,
Yeah, hi.
yeah. So I think we are done with our you know discussions, and we have had a very insightful session
Yeah.
with these are experts in their domains, and they have shared uh, you know their experiences, and I think this should really help the audience into understanding the security domain, the opportunities ahead, and you know how they can pursue a career in cybersecurity. So, thank you.
Yeah, I for sure learned a lot. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, all the panelists.
So,
And thank you, Alka, for moderating.